guys, thanks for joining me on Amy Lee Online. On today's edition of Amy Lee Online, we're going to talk about camera basics and shutter speed for beginners. A huge topic for many new photographers is getting their cameras from auto to manual. And in this 4-part series, I'm going to show you how to do just that. So shutter speed, let's look at shutter speed. 2 days ago, we talked about ISO, and it's always best to start with ISO and then work to shutter speed. So understand the ISO and then go to shutter speed. So what is shutter speed? Well, basically what shutter speed is the length of time that it takes for your camera lens's shutter to open and close. It's similar to ISO, and it allows the light into the sensor and also allows your image to create movement in the picture or freeze the picture as well. So it's similar to ISO, as it allows light in and how quickly it allows light in and how much light it also allows into the camera to create your image. So obviously the slower that your shutter speed goes, the more light is able to get inside the camera. If you can imagine your shutter a circle similar to a fan, it opens up, and obviously if it takes longer to open and close, more light is going to be able to get into the camera. And then the opposite is also true. The faster that your shutter speed goes, the less light will enter your camera. So when you're wanting to design an image, you can think about those sorts of things. Do you want movement? Do you want lots of light? Do you want it to be quick? Do you want to freeze the frame? So think about those things when you're setting up your shutter speed. Okay, so we'll look at this image here, the cross-section of a camera. Okay, so what happens when you're actually making an image? The mirror flips up, the shutter opens, and that allows the light in to hit the sensor. Okay, the top image here is what we see. So we're looking through the viewfinder. Okay, the light enters through the lens and bounces off the mirror, and then it reflects off the pentaprism and goes through the viewfinder, so we can see what we're looking at and how we're going to design the image. But when you're filming, then the mirror will flip up and the shutter will open. That allows the light to hit the sensor. And you can actually control how long you'd like your shutter to stay open by turning the dial to the longer length of time. So that's obviously meaning to turn the dial on your camera to a longer time frame for the shutter to stay open on your camera. And then if you'd like to leave it open continuously, you can then switch the dial where your M is. Instead of it being on M for manual, you would switch it to bulb, and that will allow you to keep the shutter open for as long as you'd like it to be open when you're holding down the button. Obviously, the longer that it's open, the more light is let in and the more motion you will also get. So not only does it allow more light, it allows you to have a lot more motion in the image, or blur. Not only does it control light, but movement as well. So you can freeze an image in time, or you can allow a little bit of motion to show that that's actually a moving object. So let's break it down some more. You can set the shutter high to capture fast moving objects, as I said, almost freezing the action. Or you can also set it to a longer or a slower time, and then it stays open to capture the movement and have some blur. As you can see in my images to the right, there's a waterfall image there, and I didn't want it to be too fast, but I didn't want it to be too slow either. So I set the camera to 1/4 of a second, and I allowed the water to look like it's softer, sort of a blur. So it's not actually droplets, it's more of what the eye captures rather than what, say, a high-speed camera would capture if it was like small little droplets. I wanted it to look really romantic. And then on the right-hand side, you can see there's the little boy running past his uncle, and that was set at 1/400th of a second, and at f8, and the ISO at 640 on a 105mm distance. So he looks like there's a little bit of blur in his hands, but I've set it just enough to show that he is running. So there's a little bit of blur in there, but his face is tack sharp because I held on to the focus of his face and panned it as I was moving with him and taking the shot. So I was able to capture him running past his uncle, and it was quite a cool little shot that we got there. So that is what I mean by capturing something fast moving and making it look like it's still a moving object, but you've caught it as a freeze frame moment. So you're freezing the action. Now, the slower you go, obviously, the more you will need a tripod or even a remote to stop any sort of camera shake. So bear in mind that when you are filming something or taking an image of something and you've got it on bulb, be aware that you are going to not be able to hand hold this. It's going to need to have a tripod because any kind of shake, any kind of motion whatsoever, your image is going to be completely blurry and you're not going to get any sort of sharpness in the image whatsoever. So make sure if you're going to do star trails or light streaming or things like that, that you want to look at making sure that you've got it on a tripod, and you might want to invest in a remote as well, so you can click the remote. You don't have to actually touch the camera, because even the tiniest shake of touching that button on your camera when it's set to bulb is going to give you some camera shake and blur out the image, and it'll waste all the time that you spend doing that image. Okay, so how to set your shutter speed. I've got some diagrams here. Find the shutter speed on the back of your screen here on the left hand side of the picture up the top, where it's got the 1 and the stroke and another number. That's your shutter speed. Okay, if you have a full frame camera, it's going to be on the back as well, but it'll also be on the top. There'll be a viewfinder there and a little view window, and on the left hand side you'll have your shutter speed numbers there at the top, and that's how you change them. You change them with the dial there, where you would the little dial near the shutter, near the click button. The little dial near the click button is where you will change the shutter speed there. So make sure you turn your camera to manual. Set your ISO first, as we spoke about the other day, and then find your shutter speed on your camera. It should look like the examples on the right. If you have most DSLRs look the same to this. And obviously, a quick tip, shoot at a shutter speed higher than the length of your lens. Okay, so for example, if you are using a 50mm lens, you would then set your shutter speed to 1/50th of a second and above. If you've got a 100mm lens, then you could set it to 1/100th of a second and above, and that will give you a crisp image. You know, we use shutter speed for all sorts of things. We can do so many amazing things with shutter speed. And I really personally don't like to shoot anything under 1/80th of a second, or 1/80 of a second, or maybe even 1/100th of a second without using a tripod. If I shoot above that, I'll hand hold it, but I mean, if you've got a really steady hand, you could go as low as 1/60th of a second and not use a tripod, and I have done that before. But I find when I'm getting tired, or if it's late in the day, if I need to go that low, I will use something to stabilize my camera, just because I don't want any camera shake. And also, it's dependent on the situation. You could be in a really windy situation and you need to have some stabilization there. You know, and obviously if your subject moves, dances and jumps, and you want to capture that crisp image and freeze the frame and not have any motion or anything like that, you could take it up to 1/500th of a second, or 1/500 and above, and that will give you a really crisp, sharp image of that person moving, dancing or jumping around without any blur at all. I've done a little diagram here for you, a chart, so just to give you an idea of the different shutter speeds you can use for different situations. So I thought I would put this up for you, and while you're watching the YouTube video on shutter speed for beginners, what you could do is pause this here, and you could possibly take a photo of it with your phone, or you could take a photo of it with your iPad, and then you can take it with you wherever you go, so that you can have a little reminder of how it works. So for instance, if you were, say, doing a sporting event, You might want to keep your shutter speed between 250 and 750. That's 1/250th of a second or 1/750th of a second. You could try, if you wanted to get some motion in there, you could try going right down. If you want some blurs, you could do 1/15th or 1/30th of a second to get some blurs. But always, as a tip, wait for the peak of the action to freeze the action. So you want to make sure that you're waiting for, taking a few shots. Maybe put it on continuous when you know that there's a good action bit coming up, and yeah, grab that shot and have perfect timing that way. And you can go on through it and have a read of it and go through it and see which one suits your style of photography and give it a try. Okay, so now after watching the ISO video, you will have a little bit better understanding, hopefully, of how ISO works with your DSLR. Now that you understand shutter speed and how that works a little bit better with your DSLR, you can start to try and play around a little bit and see how they work together. You can do, you don't have to go to manual to set your shutter speed. You can actually, if you have a Canon, you can set your shutter speed on the TV, on the dial, it should say TV, and if you have a Nikon, I believe it's SS. I'm not sure on a Sony, it could be SS as well, and other brands I'm not completely sure about the names for what they call shutter speed on their dials, but find the one that allows you just to set the shutter speed and have a play with that. And when you're looking at your ISOs, have a look at your dial where it says AV, and that should allow you to start playing with apertures and ISOs. So in our next video, we're going to talk about aperture and f-stop, so you can kind of start to understand how they all work. And then in our fourth video, we're going to talk about how to put it all together and make an image. So thank you so much for watching. Remember to like, share, and subscribe to the channel, because then you'll get all of my notifications, and upcoming videos will be sent straight to your email. So you can just click on the link and join us for our next video. And make sure to like the video so I know that you're enjoying what you're listening to and watching and it's interesting for you. And I would love to see you back here in a couple of days for our part 3 on understanding aperture and f-stop. And remember, do what you love and love what you do, and you'll never work a day in your life. Thanks again for joining me, and I'll see you soon.